Welcome, everyone, to Starting Strong, transforming how we develop the next generation of diverse educators. Thank you for joining us this afternoon or evening, wherever you may be tuning in. My name is Vince Marina, and I am the CEO of Breakthrough Collaborative, a national network of 24 affiliates working to improve equity among college graduates and education leaders. We do this by connecting middle school and high school students with diverse college-age teaching fellows who together experience the joys of teaching and learning. The pandemic has been far-reaching on our students. It's had a pretty big impact on not only our students, but also our teachers, leading us to this very pivotal moment. Central to closing the historic and persistent opportunity gap will be a strong educator workforce. And that's what we're here to discuss today. We have an incredible group of speakers and education leaders to share their insight and wisdom with us today. You are in for a real treat. Each of us has a role to play as educators, nonprofit leaders, funders, policymakers, and people who care about our students and teachers and the future of education in our country. We are grateful to partner with so many of you to champion our shared goal to strengthen the national teacher pipeline. One of those partners is the U.S. Department of Education. We are honored to have U.S. Deputy Secretary of Education, Cindy Martin, to share remarks with us at this time.
Good evening. I'm Cindy Martin, Deputy Secretary at the U.S. Department of Education. On behalf of the Biden-Harris administration, Secretary Cardona, and the whole Department of Education, thank you for inviting me to share some thoughts with you during this important conversation on how we can continue developing the next generation of diverse educators. And thank you for your tireless work on behalf of our teachers, our schools, and our nation's children. Before joining the U.S. Department of Education, I served for 8 years as superintendent of San Diego Unified School District. And prior to that, as a principal, a vice principal, and a literacy specialist. But the most important job title that I've had in my more than 30-year career is teacher. It is the title that inspires and drives many of you, the leaders of the teaching profession, as we imagine and build the future of education in America. You may have heard Secretary Cardona and I talking a lot about the opportunity to raise the bar in education. That's because we're on the cusp of a new era in education in America. As we continue to recover from the unprecedented disruption caused by the pandemic, we have an opportunity to improve our education system to levels that exceed pre-pandemic achievement. As we collectively work to raise the bar and fully support our students and schools, we can improve outcomes for all our children and young people, preparing them for a future of lifelong learning and success. One of the priorities of our plan to raise the bar in education is to boldly improve learning conditions, which means supporting teachers to get into and stay in the profession. Each day, teachers guide students' learning, encourage their aspirations, and support them on the path to success. Teachers are mentors, advocates, champions for children, and so much more. Teachers inspire students to dream, dare, and do extraordinary things. As students continue to recover from the pandemic, teachers are doing what they've always done, giving students what they need, when they need it, where they need it, and in the ways that they need it. This includes working to accelerate students' academic learning and ensuring students have a strong foundation for their mental health and well-being. Supporting and investing in our educators has never been more important. The Biden-Harris administration is committed to investing in the preparation, recruitment, and support of a diverse educator workforce, and not just classroom teachers, but school leaders, support staff, and mental health professionals. I'm proud that unprecedented resources in the American Rescue Plan are helping states and districts to attract train and retain diverse educators all across the country. We know that the American Rescue Plan is spurring one of the most equitable recoveries in history. And a big part of that work in education is how we're growing a diverse pipeline of teaching talent. I'm also encouraged by the Augustus F. Hawkins Centers of Excellence, a federal program that just received funding for the first time. This program will increase the quality and number of new teachers of color that graduate from teacher preparation programs at historically Black colleges, tribal colleges, and minority-serving institutions. Educators of color are critical to addressing long-standing equity gaps in education. When our students of color are taught by diverse teachers, we see academic achievement increase, higher enrollment in advanced courses, less students impacted by exclusionary discipline practices like suspensions and expulsions, and more referrals to gifted and talented programs. Teaching is the foundation of all opportunity in America. Every day, our educators help students see that anything is possible through a great education, perseverance, and hard work. Education prepares our young people to take on the jobs we need in our country in technology, infrastructure, manufacturing, transportation, and so much more. Teachers are preparing the workforce of tomorrow to reimagine and rebuild a new economy. Every child in every community across the country should be taught by talented, well-supported, well-compensated, and diverse educators. If we work together to raise the bar in education, I know we can make this a reality for every single child. Thank you for your partnership.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary Martin, Secretary Cardona, and the administration for your commitment to raise the bar on how we support students and teachers. I am excited now to introduce our first speaker of the evening, Dr. Travis J. Bristol. Travis is an associate professor of teacher education and policy at the University of California, Berkeley School of Education. He is also the chair of the board of directors of the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. Dr. Bristol's research is situated at the intersection of teacher policy and practice, exploring policies that impact teacher workplace experiences, educator professional learning communities, the intersection of race and gender in schools. Travis, welcome. Thank you for being here with us today.
Great to be here, Vince, with you and the Breakthrough Collaborative team. And that introduction was a mouthful, so.
Well, no, it's a worthy one. So really appreciate you carving out the time to join us in today's conversation. And I'll just kick it off with my first question for you, which is, how did you come to this work? And was there a moment or experience for you that stood out?
Yeah, I come to this work, I suspect, like many of the college students that you work with, not sort of falling into it. I did not expect or desire to become a teacher. In my freshman year in college, I worked in an after-school program as a summer job, as like my work study rather, because I needed extra resources, and I found myself really enjoying the work that I was doing, working with students who reminded me of the kinds of schools, who were students of the kinds of schools that I attended. And into this question about, was there a particular moment, I remember, again, as a college freshman, sitting in on a class where we were thinking about race and schools, and being surprised to hear that many of the experiences around or for students of color reflected my own experience as someone who grew up attending New York City public schools. And so because I found myself, both tutoring in this after-school program, learning about the experiences in this formal class setting, I believed and thought, maybe I'll try this teacher thing. And many years later, I'm still at it.
Yes, the profession has a way of kind of drawing you in. So Travis, we're here today talking about diversity within the teacher workforce. My next question to you is, what are the demographics of the teacher workforce?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the demographics of the teacher workforce, I think it's important to note that it does not necessarily reflect the student, right, population. So we are an incredibly diverse country, and it's reflected in our student population. So more than half of the students in U.S. public schools identify as Black, Indigenous, or students of color, people of color, and yet around 20% of all teachers identify as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color. So we see this demographic mismatch between teachers and students as it relates to their ethno-racial diversity.
No, that's really helpful for you to sort of show the difference in our student demographics versus our teacher demographics. But I'm wondering, can you just elaborate a little bit further? Why is teacher diversity so important?
Yeah. I mean, it's important for many reasons. One, we believe in this democracy, in this American project, that that diversity is a strength, not a weakness. That in order for our democracy to thrive, we need to have diverse representation. That's why we have, right, senators represented from all 50 states. So diversity is a strength, not a weakness. And we also have some clear evidence, some clear research that when Black students, for example, have a Black teacher, that they're less likely to be suspended when they have a Black teacher, that they're more likely to consider going to college, that their learning increases on standardized exams. That's also true for Latina students, that when they have a Latina teacher, they're less likely to get suspended. More likely to take more rigorous courses. We even have some more recent data on Asian American students, that when Asian American students have an Asian American teacher, that they're less likely to get suspended. So these are data looking at large, quote unquote, data sets that are quantitative. We also know that it's not only that the benefits of having someone who might look like me or you for white, it's not only good for Black students or for Latinx students, that white students, when surveyed across 6 urban school districts, said that they preferred having a teacher of color. So teachers of color they're good for my kids, and they're good for the grandkids of President Biden, because white students are saying that they live in a diverse democracy and they don't see that reflected in their classrooms.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really helpful to hear. And just given your research, your quantitative and qualitative research, I know that you've had the opportunity to speak to a number of educators, particularly Black and BIPOC educators. And so what we are curious to understand or learn more about is essentially what, based on your research, are some of the experiences of Black or BIPOC teachers?
Yeah. I mean, their experiences are one of joy and challenge, right? It's not a story of, it's not a fairy tale, and it's not a story that's all bleak. That teachers of color are come into the profession wanting to, on average, work with students who come from backgrounds and who share their own racial identity. The teachers recognize and have understood that education is a part of their own, and they name it as being part of their own social mobility, and they want to offer that to other children. And so for them, that is joyful, that they get to teach content and to open up the minds on average for children of color. And so that is the joy of teaching for teachers of color, Black, Indigenous, and teachers of color. And there are also some challenges. We know that teachers of color, Black teachers in particular, are tracked into certain types of schools. That just like tracking happens for students, it happens for teachers, that because of discrimination in their hiring process, they're tracked into schools that are on average quite challenging, schools that have been historically neglected, schools that have been historically under-resourced, that these teachers come to the profession wanting to do incredible work, but are tasked with trying to make bricks without straw, trying to repair 400 plus years of harm. And so that makes it challenging for these educators. And on average, what we know from research is that teachers of color, Black teachers in particular, have higher rates of leaving and both of moving from one school to the next and leaving their profession because they are working in the most challenging schools. And so there are some joys and there are some challenges as well.
Mm-hmm. And so what do you, related to what you just shared here is important for us to know and understand. I guess, what do you see as the solution to that?
Well, I'm a researcher, and so my answer is always it's complicated and it's more than just one thing, right? I think it's important to know that some of the that the demographic mismatch, the underrepresentation of teachers, in particular Black teachers, is one that is caused by policy, and it's one that policy can fix. So before the Brown decision, we had large numbers of Black teachers. In particular, we had large numbers of Black educators. And after the Brown decision, right, when Black children were integrated into white schools, not the other way around, right? White children did not go to Black schools. What we saw was that their Black teachers did not follow them. And in particular, many of the Black men who were principals, because misogynoir that's a whole another topic, but their Black principals in those schools were fired. And so what we saw was about a third of the Black educator workforce was lost because of Brown, because of policies that did not allow for these schools in which educators were going to hire them. So policy can play a role. And so looking at the kinds of policies that make it challenging for people of color, for example, who we know that they have high college debt burdens, policies that stop loan forgiveness and discourage individuals from maybe pursuing a master's degree are something that can help. We also know that that you can't begin to build pathways for people of color and Black people into the teaching profession if we disproportionately suspend them at the moment that they begin schooling. Black children make up about 18% of all preschoolers, yet they account for 40% of all preschool suspensions. So policies, you can't build a workforce if you suspend people, in particular Black children, at the very moment that they begin schools. We can't cluster Black, Indigenous, and educators of color in the most challenging schools without giving them the resources, right? And so to answer your question, it's not just one thing. It's thinking about really what we call like the life course of a teacher's career and a child's career, to think about all the ways, all the structural barriers that make it challenging for them to enter the profession.
Well, thank you so much for that, Travis, and thank you for sharing your expertise. And we're going to move to our next speaker now, but you will be back to join us. So next, I want to introduce our second speaker, Jarvis Lundy, who is the head of the Future Black Teachers at Teach.org. Teach is on a mission to assist anyone who is interested in becoming a teacher, providing a comprehensive website encompassing a wide array of resources in every single state, and a personalized support for teacher candidates. In his role, Jarvis has had the unique opportunity to ensure we have more Black teachers in the classroom across the country, providing support and resources to ensure Black high school students, college students, and career searchers are inspired to enter into the classroom. Jarvis is also a Breakthrough Teaching Fellow alumni and formerly served as a program director at Breakthrough Houston. Jarvis, we're so thrilled to have you with us. Welcome.
Thank you for that very humbling introduction, and thank you, Breakthrough, for having me all those years ago. That set me on the path to be here tonight.
That's awesome. Well, we are so grateful that you're not only here with us, but the work that you have done over the years with Breakthrough. So Jarvis, my first question for you is, how have your diverse experiences as an educator helped shape you?
Wow, it's a great question. In short, it's given me empathy for the people that we're trying to bring into the workforce, right? So, similar to Travis, I did not plan on becoming a teacher. I was going to law school. And then I stumbled upon an office in Coral Gables, Florida, and Coconut Grove, Florida specifically, at Breakthrough Miami, almost 2 decades ago to this point. And that set my life trajectory on a course that I am thrilled to be on, right? And so that experience of being able to try out education, to understand what it means to impact students and teach and the power that that holds really set me on a path to become a teacher, a principal, and a school leader. And now in the nonprofit sector, working to kind of do it full circle and bring more teachers like myself into the classroom, right? And so those diverse experiences has allowed me to see the issue of teacher retention, teacher recruitment from so many different angles. Again, having been a teacher, having attempted to hire teachers myself, and trying to find teachers in the pipeline to get them interested. So it's just been it has been a diverse experience, but it's given me a great insight into the issue that that we're talking about today.
Yeah. So Jarvis, what I hear you saying especially is that your lived experiences within your career really help shape the work that you're doing today, which we think is so critical and important. And, we at Breakthrough have been partnering together with you all to support Black educators as well as aspiring educators and current teachers. So my question to you is, given the work that you do at teach.org, can you tell us a little bit about why was it important to launch the Black Affinity Group? And can you say a little bit more about what the Black Affinity Group is?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll answer this in two different ways, right? So I think in order thinking about why we target Black teachers, specifically Black aspiring teachers, Travis mentioned some great data points. And if you slice it down a bit, you think about the teaching workforce generally, when we look just at Black teachers, we're looking at only 7% of the national teaching workforce being Black. And if you look at Black males, that's 2%, right?
Wow.
And when we think about, where Breakthrough is situated specifically, Breakthrough has the ability to reach aspiring teachers who have taken a specific action to show their interest, right? It's like, I am trying teaching out. I am in some way interested in teaching. And so with Teach, what we realize is Breakthrough is a great organization that we can work with in order to capitalize on those interested people, give them the resources they need to continue and further their exploration of education and hopefully becoming a career, right? And so that's why we started the affinity group within Breakthrough, and that's also why we focus specifically on Black teachers specifically. And I think about Black teachers in general is, again, we realize, Travis said so many great data points. We realize the importance of students seeing people look like themselves, right? From the suspension discipline rate to academic achievement, it matters, frankly. And we essentially just want to make sure that we have people in classrooms who are excited to be there, who reflect our demographics across the country. So it's incredibly important. And we realize, that we just have to make sure that we're capitalizing on as many people as possible who are interested in the classroom.
Yeah. And then based on this, and I know you've touched on this a little bit, but would love for you to elaborate. What have you gleaned from the group, and what were some of the surprises that came out for you?
Well, prior to doing the group, we did a survey before we even started Future Black Teachers Initiative. We surveyed Black students in high school and college, and we realized it's going to sound like a really high number, but 30 to 40% of Black students in high school and college have indicated they are open to teaching. That's across the country. That's
Wow.
over thousands of teachers that we surveyed. 30 to 40% of Black students are open to teaching, right? But yet we realize that, again, 7% and 2%, right? We think of Black teachers in general and 2% Black males specifically actually make it through, right? And so what I gleaned from the group specifically, and what we continue to learn, is that there's no one size fits all solution, right? Black teachers are not a monolith. Aspiring Black students are not a monolith. No demographic specifically is a monolith. We are all incredibly diverse, even within similar groups. And what we've identified along the way in our research is 24 unique barriers that prevent an aspiring teacher from becoming a teacher. right? And so we've also worked to identify 33 unique supports that we're here at Teach that we can provide to help overcome those barriers, right? And so when we think about there's 24 barriers that might stop someone from becoming interested in teaching and getting to the classroom, all those steps along the way, all people in the groups that we talk to, all somewhere along that funnel, somewhere along one barrier might be something that throws someone else off. One barrier might be easily bypassed by another person, right? And so the power of the group and the need for it is the personalization of those our resources in a way to make sure that we are getting a solution to every single person. But the biggest thing I've learned is that there's not just one solution, right? We think about 24 barriers, hundreds and hundreds of people that we're working with. It's going to be a lot of work and a lot of personalized work, but it has to happen because again, we know that the data speaks for itself. There is a crisis, right? We need more teachers in general, specifically more diverse teachers as well. And so if we want to make sure that we are addressing and solving that problem, we have to be willing to do the work of essentially providing personalized resources to individual teachers to make sure that every single person who is interested in teaching is put in a position and to become a teacher ultimately. And that's what we do at Teach, and that's what some of the groups that we work with aim to do.
Yeah. And touch a little bit, and then I would love for you to touch on this for a little bit, and then we're going to invite Travis back into the conversation. But how is teach.org working to reduce some of these barriers?
Yeah, so like I touched on, we offer personalized resources, right? So we realize that teacher retention is incredibly important, but where we are situated in the recruitment phase, right? So we work primarily with figuring out wherever you are in this country, right? If you're interested in teaching, whether you're a high school, college student, paraprofessional, a military veteran, or career switcher, wherever you are, enter this journey of wanting to be an educator, we're here to help you. So we offer personalized resources, financial aid guides, certification programs and or educator preparation program finders and resources, one-on-one coaching as well, to really work with individuals in groups to make sure that they're getting the resources they need, right? So we realize, and another piece of this, and I'll touch on this later, is really attacking the misconceptions that there are about education. And that's another piece that we do through PSAs and different marketing and different promotions, and really allowing people like some guests we'll hear later today to share their stories of the power that they have in the classroom, the impact that they can make in the classroom, right? And so we hit from those angles of here are these personalized resources wherever that may be, financial aid, how to find a certification program for you. You need talking to a career coach and work on the process to becoming a teacher. Or hey, you know what? Like you need to be inspired. You need to understand the reality, the great reality of being a teacher and the power that holds. Here's this great promotional information and testimonials that we share as well. So we hit it from those points, and we've effectively, reached over 15,000 aspiring Black teachers, and I think at this point we're up to almost 1 million students have been impacted. Will have been impacted by the teachers that we brought in. So it's a lot of work. It's very fulfilling work, but we need to do more of it.
That's incredible. And Jarvis, I do want to hear a little bit about how you're addressing the misconceptions. But before we do, I want to bring Travis back into the conversation so that we can begin to talk a little bit more about what you've already started to tee up for us here, Jarvis. And this question I would offer to both of you to respond, which is, how do we recruit, prepare, and support aspiring educators of color? And part of the reason why I ask too is that 76% of our breakthrough teaching fellows identify as students of color. And so when we think about the idea of them potentially going into the workforce, we would just love to hear from you. How do we recruit, prepare, and support aspiring educators of color?
So I think, and I'll say, I think that we could do a better job of maybe demystifying the idea that teachers don't get paid a lot. Now, let me just say this. We need to pay teachers more, full stop, period. And I'm from, Brooklyn, New York. My mother is entering her 45th year as a preschool teacher. She was a single mother. She raised, me and two siblings. on her preschool salary, which at the time was less than my college tuition. She was making about $30,000. When I became a teacher in New York City Public Schools, I was making about $46,000. Now, to me, that was a lot of money. We need to pay teachers more, and we need to, give aspiring educators some sense around what teachers make at the beginning. I think also at the beginning, we need to also present sort of like some sort of career ladder. And one of the things I really like about the work around the national board is that, your learning, your trajectory does not end when you're a first or second year teacher, right? You can receive this national certification and become a teacher leader, right? And so I think that we need to just share with future teachers that that there is this ladder, there is a trajectory around becoming or entering the teaching profession. Jarvis, I'll turn it.
Yeah, I'll go ahead, Vince.
Oh, no, Jarvis, I'm curious to hear from you.
Yeah,
and if you could touch on the misconceptions, I think that would be helpful.
Travis hit on the first one, right? The teacher pay, right? Again, I double down that teachers absolutely need to get and unequivocally need to get paid more. But when we a survey and ask teachers how much do you think a teacher makes, it almost always is far less than they actually make. When we show, hey, here are all these other entry level jobs in tech, in business, it's going to traditionally be lower than the teacher salary. That's the one thing there. I think also too, we think about misconceptions. We think about the type of work that people do, right? And we think about some of the narratives that go along with teaching, especially if you think about early childhood. I taught kindergarten, right? So you often hear terms like babysitting, things like that, and I think those narratives do a disservice to getting more people into the field, right? So I think changing the narrative around the profession and showing the professionalization of the field, right? Like this, you are going to develop leadership skills. You're developing public speaking skills. To Travis's point, your career doesn't necessarily have to stop in the classroom. There are several other careers within the school, within school districts, within the nonprofit sector that literally start from the classroom. So we can show people those things that, hey, this is a career that can, run you. Travis and I started teaching as well. We were teachers, right? We're still in education in some form, right? And everyone on the call, right? So thinking about those things, that it's a great career that extends from the classroom. You pick up some great resources, and there's I think just the narratives that go with teaching. We often tell people why not to do something, right? I think it's important for us to share why we should do something. So sharing those testaments of impact that people make, and not bearing those, and not these one-offs. Like, we often talk about these students who are here in New Orleans. There's been a couple of students who are getting almost $10 million worth of scholarship, right? How amazing would it be to hear from those teachers who taught that student and say, hey, I made an impact on that student's life, or better yet, have that student share that story, right? So the more stories we can put out there to reshape the narrative of the profession, I think that will go a long way.
Perfect. My next question is for both of you, and Jarvis, will have you respond first. Is both of you have pretty esteemed careers, right? And, you've had to navigate a lot through your career progression. And so for those who may be watching who were where you were however many years ago, we're curious to know what resources and support have supported or helped each of you. So starting with you, Jarvis, what were some of the resources and supports that you tapped into?
Yeah, the first one is honestly Breakthrough. And I can't stress enough how much of an impact Breakthrough had on me and my career in education, right? So when I initially started getting a job in education through Teach for America here in New Orleans, I was not seen as a first year teacher. Because I had done 3 summers with Breakthrough, I was seen as a somewhat experienced teacher. So I was given, a leg up essentially in terms of the classroom that also allowed me to be more successful faster. Like, I did not struggle my first year teaching because, again, I had taught for 3 years with Breakthrough. And so because I didn't struggle, right, that put me on a trajectory to move up faster. And in that day and age, it was because of the need. Someone needed to fill those roles, and I was just tapped to do it because, again, I had that experience. There's also a lot of organization. Leading Educators is another organization I've done. Really Graduate School is another program that I've done, that are out there that you could often get your schools to pay for, that will help progress you if you want to make education a career. But also, there's no shortage of opportunities. in the summer throughout the school year to sharpen your skills, to give yourself a wider view of education. And I think, frankly, like I think about Travis research is, understanding and researching, the field, the policy that just knowledge is power. So if you are interested in these things, policy, find internships, find ways to get yourself in the door of understanding different policy conversations. And, teachers have the summers off, right? It's a rewarding time. It's also a great opportunity to work on some of these other things, work on a campaign, do lots of other things, work some policy papers, support your career that way. So yeah, I think for me, it was just taking advantage of the opportunities that were presented to me that I kind of just looked up and looked for and just filled my summers with that. Not telling people not to have a summer, but for me, that was the right choice for me in the career path that I wanted to have.
Hmm.
And then, so Travis, what about yourself? What are the resources and support that you tapped into?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, actually, probably very similar to Jarvis. Probably I didn't do breakthrough, but I did a 12-month teacher prep program that was, quote unquote, clinically rich. So I started my program 3 weeks after I graduated from college, and the second week of the program, I was I was in a classroom observing a teacher, and I spent 12 months, right? And so when I started in New York City public schools, I felt prepared. I mean, I struggled, but I felt prepared. So I definitely, for me, that having some early experience or being in a clinically rich teacher prep program was very important. I also think I went back home to teach, and so like I also had, it was very stressful, and I had like a community, like my family, that provided some balance, so that work did not feel like I was drowning, because I could go to cookouts or family things on the weekends.
Yeah. I appreciate both of you sharing the resources that have supported you. And the purpose of tonight's conversation is really about supporting educators of color, supporting diverse teacher pipelines, and ensuring that we're having a strong start. So my last question for both of you is, how do we ensure a strong start for early careers for teachers? And we can start with you, Travis, with this one.
Oh, okay. So I think it's important for early career teachers to know and hold that their teacher preparation program can't teach you everything. That it begins, right, your career. And so in your first year and your second year, that as you are teaching your students, that you should find opportunities to learn yourself, right? And so you should tap into PD opportunities in your district, online. And I think that once you have a learner stance and recognize that you can't learn everything in the 6-month program or the 12-month program, that'll allow you to that will set you up for success.
Thank you. And Jarvis?
Yeah, I think it's important as we think about that recruitment to enter the classroom cycle, right? I think it's important also to let people have an insight on what they're getting themselves into, right? So I think as much as we can encourage folks to do programs like Breakthrough, to do programs like the program Travis was talking about, to experience, that aspect of like, this is what it might feel like. This is just a taste of what you can experience in the classroom. Then I think we do a service to ourselves as a field to get people to stay more. I think also really working to build community for people, right? So it's like if I start a school, is there a community, right? So if I don't teach where I'm from, or even if I do, are there a community of people that I can talk to vent or to problem solve around, like, hey, like we're all first year teachers, or like, can I talk to a veteran teacher? Can we talk to another first year teacher? Like, we all don't have someone that we can talk to in our schools, right? So is there ways that we can connect folks to communities? There are so many organizations out there for teachers, early stage teachers, as well as veteran teachers, and throughout that whole pipeline. So we can connect people with opportunities and communities to help support each other, then I think we can do we can, in a great way, keep people in our classrooms and retain them for more than, was it, I forgot, the 2 years, 3 years, like we can, yeah, we can retain them past that threshold. But they have to know what they're getting themselves into. They have to have a positive outlook on the profession entering it, and they have to have a community that's going to help inspire them to stay.
Jarvis and Travis, thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights. And just for those who are watching, we'll have the opportunity to hear from Travis and Jarvis before we close this evening. But before we do, I just want to take a quick moment to share about Breakthrough and how we're working to strengthen and diversify the teacher pipeline. So at Breakthrough, through our National Teaching Fellowship, Breakthrough provides college-age students with an on-ramp to teaching. So as Jarvis shared earlier, the early exposure really helps college-age students really get an understanding of what the teacher profession is. And they do this through hands-on, immersive classroom experience, teaching middle school and high school students and learning from professional staff and experienced educators. At Breakthrough last summer, we worked with over 800 teaching fellows from 250 colleges and universities, which offered them over 100 hours of training and coaching and support. And these college students had the opportunity to support over 9,000 students across our country in our 24 affiliates. And our near-peer teaching model, or near-peer mentoring model, centers on relationships between our teaching fellows and students. Students connect with teaching fellows on a deep level and see them as role models because they see themselves in our teaching fellows. And then our teaching fellows learn what student educator interactions can look like and realize the power these relationships can have over learners. So we could not have an event like tonight where we're talking about the teacher workforce without the perspectives and voices of teachers. I am beyond thrilled to introduce to you two Breakthrough Teaching Fellow alumni and educators to this discussion. And so I would love to welcome Luis Gonzalez and Glenetta Pope to our conversation. And I'll just do quick introductions of each of you. So Luis is a high school social studies teacher at Huntington Park High School, and it's a STEM magnet school in Huntington Park, California. And Glenetta is a 5th grade teacher at Crete Academy in Los Angeles. So welcome both of you to this conversation, and thanks so much for joining us today. So Luis, I'm going to go to you first. So you served 2 years as a Breakthrough Teaching Fellow at San Juan Capistrano, and then you entered the classroom in 2020. How would you describe your first year as a teacher?
Thanks, Vincent. Thanks for having us. I'll start with giving a shout out to Breakthrough San Juan. It was a really special experience, holds a special place in my heart. It's been very fascinating being a teacher, especially with the pandemic. But as my colleagues say, it gets better. It's been a challenge in a lot of ways, but to be honest, I've loved the ways that students have shown resilience during this time. It's the reason that I show up to work every single morning. Our kids are powering through, and I think about when I first started teaching in 2020. We had students that were struggling with housing insecurity, with their mental health, and the fact that I was there in that classroom offering up a space where they felt connected to their teacher, where I provided them with brain breaks and check-ins. I'm hoping that made a difference in their lives, and they definitely sustained me in that time that was difficult for everyone too.
Luis, I appreciate you sharing that. One question that I have for you before we move to Glenetta is, what did you take away from your Breakthrough experience, and how did it prepare you to become a teacher?
I'm definitely grateful for the Breakthrough experience because my mom tells me that she's known that I wanted to be a teacher since I was little. She kind of jokes around and says that I would play around like a classroom and being the teacher with the people that I lived with in the apartment complex, and they were my students. but Breakthrough was the first opportunity I had to experience it before making a commitment to become an educator. And I've shared this before in other settings where even having the opportunity to stand by the door and greet students, that's when I felt like, you know what, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Just being able to make that connection with the student as they're coming into your classroom, and then to be able to facilitate a space where they feel connected, where they feel like they belong. It's the greatest job. It comes with its challenges, but I'm grateful that Breakthrough allowed me to see that this is something that I could do for the rest of my life. Had I not done Breakthrough, I don't think that I would have had that connection with teaching.
Thank you for that. And Glenetta, I know you've held various careers or roles within education. You've been a teacher, a principal, assistant head of school, program coordinator, consultant, even supporting our Miami affiliate as dean of faculty and students and assistant director. What brought you back to the classroom to teach fifth graders?
Insanity. No. So as you said, I've done a variety of things since Breakthrough, and everything always brings me back to that experience. Last year, I was a dean at a high school, loved it, but I missed the classroom. And so a friend of mine called me this summer and said, look, school's about to start in a month and we need teachers so bad. Like, can you roll through? And that was literally like my call back into the classroom. And so, I empathize with her a lot because it's a lot going on and it's very hard to get quality teachers. It's very hard to get quality teachers. So as a favor to a friend, but also as part of my desire to return to the classroom, that's how I came back.
That's great. And similar question that I asked Luis is, what stood out for you about your experience with Breakthrough?
So I did Breakthrough Miami. Shout out to the other Miami alumni. And back then it was called Summer Bridge. So I was there back in the day. And I did it for 5 summers. Initially, when I came, I was a junior in college or sophomore in college, and I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I always wanted to be a teacher, but I had kind of started to lean towards law because I heard about the money. And I was very nervous about being a teacher and not being able to, what I thought, take care of myself and all those great things. And so I decided to do Summer Bridge Miami, and I was there for 5 summers back to back. And what was so amazing is that I feel that everything that I do now, so much of what I do now as an educator is tied to Breakthrough. Number one, collaboration. All of a sudden, back then it was high school and college students. We were thrown, 30 of us, into a room and told, put the kids first, make it fun, teach them, reignite their love for learning and just work together without arguing, driving each other crazy. And it was a huge task. My very first year, John Flickinger assigned me to be dean of faculty. And again, here I am going into my junior year of college. I'm like, what does that even mean? And I looked around the room, and at the time I was a student at Berkeley, and I saw all these different people from different backgrounds, different cities, all over the country, different colleges, private, HBCUs, all schools from everywhere. And he said to me, your job is to unite this team to put the kids first. And it was so overwhelming initially because I was overwhelmed. And at Cal, I had kind of lived in an isolated bubble, only being with the students of color, specifically, hanging out at the Black Student Union. That's what I did. So when I came to Breakthrough Miami, I knew I had to do things differently. And I literally just started having conversations with every single person on the faculty, creating bonds, learning about who they were as people. And then once we established those relationships, we were able to work together to deliver an amazing summer program year after year. And it was kind of addictive because the first year, you know, my mom didn't want me to go. She's like, you're not going to Miami. An alligator is going to eat you up and palm trees are going to fall down on you and it's going to be a hurricane. But I went anyway. And so I just kept going back. And I know for a fact that it still to this day impacts my educational journey in this profession, especially with the kids first thing. Because many schools do not want to put kids first. They want to put money first or other things. But the idea that I was trained to do that, you know, as a young 20-something-year-old woman has stuck with me for life.
Mhm. Well, thank you. Thank you both so much for sharing. And I'll ask one more question before we invite Travis and Jarvis back to the conversation, which is, what makes you hopeful and excited about teaching at this moment? And I'll pass it to you first, Louise.
I think it comes back to my students. They give me hope. What they share about their ideas on inclusion, on equity, on fairness, on other key values. It gives me hope for what our society is going to look like moving forward. We have a lot of conversations, especially as an ethnic studies teacher, about the ways that we see unequal education, even though technically we're supposed to live in a society where there's equality. And the students, the way that they wrestle with these ideas about justice, I'm excited to see them grow up and become the leaders, hopefully back in their community where they can make a difference. We think critically about maybe the things that can go better, but I'm excited to see them in positions of power, making change and making difference. So they give me hope.
Yeah. And I, you know, as a former teacher myself and doing the work that I do now at Breakthrough, it really comes down to our kids. So I appreciate you sharing that. Glenetta, what is giving you hope? What's exciting you right now in this moment?
Last week was career week, and I, you know, as a teacher here, we were asked to invite people we knew. And so I got on, you know, Facebook. I started looking at some of my friends, and one of the first people I came across was this young lady named Mia. And Mia was my former student when I worked at Brentwood School as their summer bridge breakthrough collaborative director for a few years. And she's now a pilot. So what encourages me and keeps me going are the results. You know, the reality is that I've been in this game for almost 30 years now. So when I see Terashima Walker, the student who was at Breakthrough, who literally could tear the classroom up in like 5 seconds. And, you know, my boss then said, I want you to work with Terashima. And I'm thinking, what do I do with Terashima? Now she's an amazing young lady, has raised awesome kids. Her son recently graduated from a university in Florida. He's a teacher now. So when I see students like that, when I see results, it makes me want to keep coming here every single day. When I see Juanita Fields, who's now an administrator in Florida schools, Janelle Bravo, these are all kids who are in Breakthrough who are now giving back to education because we created an environment that was accepting, that was loving, that was encouraging, that allowed them to just be kids. And maybe it was because we had so much energy back then, it was a little different. But, you know, it was just a space where they fell in love with education and used education to literally change the trajectory of their lives. So that's why I stay in it. I know what education did for me as a young lady who grew up in East Oakland, went to Oakland Public Schools, went to UC Berkeley, went to Harvard. All those things happened because I had teachers, many of them who looked like me. My elementary school was all Black women. And they just pushed me and pushed me and pushed me. And so now I'm doing the same thing. Like there are moments when I call on my third grade teacher in my mind, like, okay, now you got to be her, the sweet one. Okay, now you got to be Miss Barrett, the firm one. Now you got to be Mr. So-and-so. Like it's just a cycle of powerful people who have sown into my life. And I want to do the same. So.
Yeah. And, Glenetta, what I heard in your response is just like the long-term impact of a teacher, right? So
God,
your teachers are still having an impact on you, and
right,
you, whether as a breakthrough teaching fellow or a teacher, have had an impact. And I'm also hearing long-term relationships, right? Staying
right.
in contact and encouraging your students. So thank you both so much for sharing. Hang out here for a second. We will bring back Jarvis and Travis to close out, to share some final thoughts. And so this question is for the whole group. And we'll start with you, Travis, then move to Jarvis, Luis, and then Glenetta, you can close this out. So Travis, as you reflect on our conversation today, what's one thing that you are taking away or want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm taking away, and what the research also supports from what I heard Luis, Glenetta, and Jarvis say, are the importance of these early experiences, right? So breakthrough being one of them. And actually my own story, right? Let me think of a situation myself. I'm a researcher, so I take distance from my own from myself, but that these early experiences really can be an important and one of the primary ways that young people find their way into the profession. And so the more that we expose young people, college students, into supportive environments where they can see teaching, not as they experienced it probably as a student, can be the on-ramp into the profession. And so listening to the stories from Luis, Glenetta, and Jarvis, Glenetta, go Bears, is what I'm reflecting on now.
Perfect. Jarvis, what about you?
Yeah, I think just so grateful to hear Luis and Glennetta's stories. Some connections there for sure that we'll touch base on later. But yeah, I'm left with a question, right? Like, what if and how do we ask every single Luis, right, when he's in just playing school at home, right? What if we ask every single student or person who's interested in teaching if they're interested in teaching? And then on top of that, what if we provide every single one of them the opportunity to experience it before they make that final decision to go into a career? I think if we do that and we answer those questions in the affirmative, we'd have millions of more teachers in our country sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Jarvis. And then Luis.
I think for me, it's I think about the reason that I became a teacher, and breakthrough taught me that I love this, but it was hard. And I think even Glenetta mentioned that you see friends going to law school. I saw friends going to top consulting firms when I was an undergrad at Georgetown, some people that went on to work for Google. And I was low income, the first in my family to go to college. And my dream has always been, yes, to support my community, but I want to buy my mom a house, And how can I make that decision if I'm a young person to live a comfortable life, but also make a difference? So we need to, as a society, figure out how can we do that. If we want these quality educators, especially educators of color, let's provide those resources. Let's make sure that there is that fair compensation. I want to make sure that as a teacher, I get paid the same, or we can make the argument a little bit better than an engineer, right? You don't want to drive in an unsafe bridge. Same thing, you want our young people to have the skills to be taught by the best, most qualified people. And in order to do that, it comes back to that fair compensation. So that's what sort of I'm wrestling with. But I'm appreciative of being here, appreciative of Breakthrough.
Thank you, Luis. And then Glenetta.
Okay, so when I did Breakthrough at Brentwood School in Los Angeles, I got an up and close personal experience of working in an independent school. And that also came through my time at Breakthrough. And after I left that assignment, I was there for 8 years. I went on to work, actually 9 years. I went on to work I started a charter school in South Central LA, where everybody had bad predictions. Mm-hmm. It's like, those kids don't want to learn. Those parents aren't going to cooperate. And what I did when I walked into that assembly the first time with the parents, I said, look, I just left a school on the West Side where everybody in that school believed that all those kids could achieve.
Mm.
So when I come here every day, I have that same perspective. Your child can achieve, but you are going to have to work with me. I will never advise you to do something that's going to hurt your child, and we have to work together every single day. And that's what we did. And I did it for 7 years, and we had amazing successes. Many of those students, I think about one of my students, Lavelle, he would literally tear up the classroom, like literally from top to bottom. DeAndre, he would tear up the classroom. Well, Lavelle's at Chico State getting his BA. DeAndre is at University of Virginia getting his BA. And it's because what I told the teachers is, I don't care what this child has done. Every time they walk into your classroom, they have a new opportunity to start again. And as educators, that's how we have to see our babies every single day. Is that we don't know what, sometimes we do know what they had to go through to even walk through the classroom door that day. So when they come into our spaces, we have to create an oasis of learning where they love coming, where they look forward to it every single day. So as an educator, we have to continue to do that, because if a kid hates coming, they're not going to want to go into education. We model as their teachers why we love this profession, and not just saying it, but showing it. So that's really what one of the things that I'm thinking about as we end this conversation is modeling what we love will recruit more people. And the pay matters, but it doesn't matter in that if people see that you love what you do and you have a purpose for what you're doing, they're going to eventually want to do it too. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank each of you, and Luis and Glenetta. I cannot think of a better backdrop for today's conversation than your actual classroom. So thank you for carving out space today to join us from your classrooms. Jarvis, Travis, thank you so much for sharing with us today. The work that each person on this call does is so critical and important, and we are so grateful for your support of our work here at Breakthrough. And I want to thank everyone who has tuned in today and your commitment to Breakthrough, supporting our students and teachers and helping to advance education equity. So if you're on the West Coast, good afternoon. And if you are on the East Coast, good evening. Take care.
Yeah, yeah. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, oh, 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 yeah, oh.